Short-handed from three. Hull comes soaring in again. Just uncanny knack. And cashes in.
Is on the upper left wing. Just got inside, circles around, pure F.
Game 3 wasn't basketball, it was daylight robbery. The Indiana Fever were leading, fighting, clawing for every possession, until a series of whistles ripped the game right out of their hands. Suddenly, the Las Vegas Aces are at the line. Aja Wilson is throwing elbows. Aaliyah Boston can't even get a fair challenge recognized. Fans at Gainbridge saw it, social media saw it, and the box score proves it. The Aces didn't outplay the Fever, they were handed that win. And the worst part? It completely overshadowed Lexie Hull's gritty, career-defining performance. But this wasn't an isolated incident. From Game 1, the officiating leaned Vegas' way. Indiana's physical defense was whistled down, while Vegas got to live at the free throw line. By Game 2, the pattern only got louder, and by Game 3, it was impossible to ignore. The Fever weren't just battling the Aces, they were battling the refs too.
Aja Wilson sets a screen where she extends her leg out, but of course they call the foul on Lexie Hull for Aja Wilson's illegal screen. Then Aja Wilson and Alyssa Smith totally foul Michaela Timpson, but there is no call. Could have took a 1-point lead going into half. Now we're up by 3 and they call a foul that isn't a foul. So we don't get calls when we're getting hit, but the Aces get a call.
Game 2 was bad, but Game 3 took it to another level. The whistles piled up until they completely dragged Indiana out of rhythm, forcing Stephanie White to call it out afterward. The breaking point came in the third quarter. Aaliyah Boston tried to challenge a foul on Jackie Young. The Fever bench was ready, but officials wouldn't even acknowledge it. Seconds later, Chelsea Gray buried a 3. Just like that, Indy's lead vanished. The crowd went from roaring to stunned silence as the momentum flipped in an instant. And it wasn't just the scoreboard swing, it was the message. The Fever had played hard enough to build separation, and it was erased with one ignored review and another Vegas bucket. Fans inside Gainbridge lost it, waving their arms and screaming at refs who shrugged it off. Clips of the whole sequence went viral, showing how the no challenge call changed the game. Those same videos highlighted flops, elbows, and cheap pushes from Vegas that drew nothing, while the Fever were punished for the smallest contact. Aja Wilson could throw her shoulder into Boston with no whistle, but Indiana couldn't even breathe without a foul. At that point, it didn't feel like missed calls. It felt like favoritism. The Fever weren't losing to just one opponent, they were losing to 2.
Wilson is 1 for 12 as a foul is called on Boston, and that will be number 2 on Aaliyah Boston.
You saw Indiana picking up full court pressure defensively, and if you're Aaliyah Boston, that's the one spot on the floor you did not want to get a foul call.
And Stephanie White is trying to challenge it and did not call the timeout in time. Gray in the corner.
And that's exactly why Lexie Hull became the heartbeat of Game 3. It wasn't just about points and stats, it was about grit. Every time she rose up for a shot, the crowd held its breath, and every time it fell, Gainbridge exploded. She gave the Fever hope when it felt like the officials were trying to take it away. That's why her night went beyond numbers. It became a statement. A player who wasn't supposed to even log minutes nearly willed her team to a series-shifting win through toughness alone. Fans recognized it immediately. Social media flooded with praise, calling her effort legendary, gutsy, and the definition of Fever basketball. Clips of her diving on the floor, fighting for jump balls, and swatting shots racked up thousands of shares. With one fan writing, "The refs tried to bury us, but Lexie Hull kept us alive." In a series overshadowed by controversy, her performance was the reminder that heart can still shine through chaos. For the Fever, that mattered. It meant that even when the scoreboard and the whistles felt stacked against them, they had players willing to bleed for the cause. And in playoff basketball, that's the kind of spark that can ignite an entire locker room heading into the next battle.
2-minute recap from last night. So Aja Wilson pushes Howard in the back. Howard pushes her in the back. It's a foul on Howard. Look at this. Aaliyah Boston gets totally fouled by Alyssa Smith. Like, it's obvious, but no call. And then Aja Wilson gets the call for not half as much. And then Alyssa Smith gets the call for not even getting touched. Here's a replay just to prove it to you. Yep, didn't get.
And that's the real frustration. Instead of celebrating one of the best defensive performances of the postseason, the storyline got twisted. A'ja Wilson didn't just have an off night, she was put in a box by Aaliyah Boston. Possession after possession, Boston cut off her lanes, bodied her inside, and forced her into fadeaways she didn't want to take. That's why Wilson went ice cold for nearly 3 full quarters. That's why the Aces had to lean on everyone else. But how did the coverage read the next morning? Wilson still finds ways to impact. Aces depth too much for Fever. No mention that Boston flat out dismantled the reigning MVP. No credit to the player who did the dirty work and made Wilson look human. That's what eats at Fever fans. It's not just the whistles that stole momentum. It's that the effort from players like Boston and Hull keeps getting buried under excuses for Vegas. So here's the truth. Indiana didn't lose because they were outplayed. They lost because of everything stacked against them. Calls, narrative, and spin. And yet, even with all that, their stars showed toughness that should have stolen the headlines. Boston locked up Wilson. Hull gave Indiana her heart. And together, they showed the Fever aren't going anywhere quietly.
Offensive foul, practically a football check, and the Aces score. So now the Aces cut it to 2, and then A'ja Wilson sets an illegal screen, and they tied things up. And then Lexie Hull gets called for a foul for doing nothing when they just had 2 illegal screens they didn't call. All right, so this is fair. Same thing happens on the other side, but they don't call a foul for Kelsey Mitchell. So Leah Boston gets called for this foul for getting her arm grabbed, but Stephanie White can't challenge. They won't let her. That's the second time this game they didn't let her have her challenge. And then A'ja Wilson starts acting like a big baby.
Game 3 was a battle Indiana didn't just play. They fought against the Vegas Aces and a string of questionable calls that seemed to tilt every possession. From whistles negating clean plays to missed fouls on A'ja Wilson and her teammates, the Fever had to endure both the opposition and the refs, yet they refused to fold. Lexie Hull, playing through visible pain, turned in a career-defining performance with 16 points, 10 rebounds, and clutch threes. While Aaliyah Boston's relentless defense forced Wilson into awkward shots and kept the game within reach. Despite Vegas technically winning, it was Indiana's grit, resilience, and teamwork, refusing to let adversity define them, that stole the narrative, showing fans that this Fever squad could compete at the highest level even when everything seemed against them.
Boston has the mismatch on Lloyd. Help comes. Kick out. Hull will fire. And hit from 3. Last 2 positions inside from Indiana. Smith tied up by Hull. And a jump ball between Smith and Hull.
Indiana did everything right. They contained A'ja Wilson, executed their game plan, and played with grit, but still fell victim to a series of questionable calls that kept the Aces in the lead, making Vegas's win feel hollow. Now, all eyes turn to Gainbridge Fieldhouse for Game 4, where the Fever have a final chance to flip the narrative and prove they belong against a team that has been gifted every break so far. Down 2 games to 1, dealing with injuries, and facing the added pressure of a hostile crowd, Indiana will rely on the energy of 17,000 fans, Aaliyah Boston's physical dominance, and Lexie Hull's clutch shooting to turn their home court into an impenetrable fortress and challenge the Aces to earn a victory without the crutch of favorable officiating.
On the left side of the floor, just a clear out, letting Jackie Young go to work.
Jackie Young with 17 points. Boston to the corner. Hull, catch, fire, and hit. Correct call. Evans dishes. Ray whips a pass inside. What a denial from Lexie Hull.
The Hull able to save the play.
12-point game, a little under 2.5 to go. Hull hits Indiana's first field goal of the quarter.
The Fever's strategy for Game 4 is clear. Push the pace from the opening tip. Feed Aaliyah Boston down low to force A'ja Wilson into tough defensive situations without the safety net of free throws, and get Kelsey Mitchell involved early to stretch the defense and build momentum. Lexie Hull, playing through injury, remains the emotional heartbeat of the team, and if she can replicate her Game 3 heroics, it could swing not just the scoreboard but the entire team's confidence. Vegas has vulnerabilities. Wilson's confidence is shaky, Jackie Young is overextended, and their depth hasn't faced a hostile, full-capacity playoff crowd like Gainbridge. Indiana didn't lose Game 3. They had it stolen by questionable officiating, and now Game 4 isn't just about survival, it's about proving the Aces' previous wins were hollow. If Boston dominates inside, Hull pushes through pain, and Mitchell heats up, 17,000 Fever fans could turn Gainbridge into a fortress and shift the series' momentum dramatically.